The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reel of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Banks presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Banks.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse versus Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. 2018's Into the Spider-Verse follows newly minted Spider-Man Miles Morales as he battles Kingpin and attempts to prevent irreparable damage to the multiverse. 2023's Across the Spider-Verse once again follows Miles as he learns more about the multiverse and the Spider-Men and villains that inhabit it. For those unfamiliar with our court proceedings, in civil cases like this, the counsel appointed to represent each film will present their case as to why their client is the superior movie, and ultimately the jury will render its verdict as to which is the better film. This decision will hereby stand in all rankings and listicles from now on until the end of time, ad infinitum. Mr. You gonna fight or you just bumping gums, you hard-boiled turtle slapper? Ryan Luis Rodriguez, you are representing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You may begin your opening statement.
May I say that it's fitting that we'll be talking about a council today, considering the motion pictures we will be discussing. But anyway, we are in an interesting place this week. Usually when we do head-to-heads, there's a clear winner and a clear loser before any lawyer says a goddamn word. However, when it comes to Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, we have a completely subjective gentleman's 9 and a gentleman's 8. Gentleman 9 being my client, gentleman's 8 being my esteemed opponent. What holds Across the Spider-Verse back exactly? Well, several things. It's narratively baggy, has too many characters that ultimately don't make much of an impact, and, frankly, is half a movie. I spent 2 hours in the cinema completely wrapped and absorbed, and then the last 20 minutes happened, and I walked out fuming. But we'll get to that in time. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we should be grateful that Disney doesn't own the cinematic rights to Spider-Man, because neither Disney or Pixar would make something so idiosyncratic or visually daring, legitimately adventurous, and aesthetically gorgeous. And maybe, just maybe, when Beyond the Spider-Verse finally arrives, it will be the last Spider-Man movie ever. Hopefully. I'm kidding. That'll never happen. It's absurd. Anyway, just wanted to say great and great-er. Thank you, case dismissed.
No, I was ready. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Appearing on behalf of Across the Spider-Verse is Mr. DJ, Mr. Byrd, and Mr. Victor Omoayo. Please present your opening statements.
Yeah, so yes, with debating Into the Spider-Verse versus Across the Spider-Verse, sort of like debating what's better, chocolate or peanut butter. So I will say, for the sake of this case, I will argue that Across the Spider-Verse is the superior movie because it takes the excellent foundation of Into the Spider-Verse and expands it to even better and greater heights. Now, the characters in the film, contrary to our esteemed opponents here for today's proceedings, the characters do make quite a memorable impact, even for those who make a very brief appearance, from Spider-Punk to Spider-Woman. Of course, you have Oscar Isaac's character, Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, being a formidable antagonist, and of course, the expansion of the story of Gwen Stacy, aka Spider-Gwen, which is more heartfelt and even more memorable than what we were introduced to in Into the Spider-Verse. Now, I am looking forward to this discussion even further, but as we will see, we will come away knowing that Across the Spider-Verse is the superior film in this case. So may the best film win.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rodriguez, please present your first exhibit.
Here's the thing. I am more than able to concur that Across the Spider-Verse is a more daring and visually beautiful installment than Into the Spider-Verse. But everything that Across has precedent in Into the Spider-Verse. The aesthetic that incorporates color dots from the old school pulpy paper that comics were illustrated on, gorgeous. How it looks like three-dimensional rendered in two-dimensionals, amazing. But everything that Across improves upon is found in Into. The visuals are just one part. Let's talk about Daniel Pemberton, the composer of the film. He recorded an entire symphonic score, transferred the recording to wax, and then put that wax on a turntable so he could scratch and remix and wave it in ways that feel so organic and perfectly suits the visuals, which shudders and shakes in ways that has a palpable heartbeat. But my favorite thing about the film, the makers incorporate the Kirby crackle, which is a glowing set of dots that he was prone to use in his comics, not to mention the Bill Sienkiewicz splendor of busy frames with colors and movement. It's great, and you wouldn't get anything in Across without these inaugural details.
All right, Victor and Carl, if you want to speak to this point, how do the two films stack up visually, and is Across standing on the shoulders of giants?
I would definitely say visually, although our esteemed opponent does make a valid point using the how do I say, the Poindexter comic style that the original comics were displayed on. I will say that that's what makes Across the Spider-Verse in the way that they have expanded it exceptionally better, as in each certain characters were introduced via a different art style, where you had Spider-Punk use the magazine cutouts into his style. You have Gwen Stacy's character, and her story arc was completely and beautifully watercolored. As far as the Vulture, the Renaissance Vulture, since he had a Renaissance theme from a Renaissance era, he was drawn in within Renaissance style.
Yes, he's made of wood.
Yes,
that's what they had to work with, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, but that's what makes it so unique, because each character had its own distinct art style, which expands from the foundation that Into the Spider-Verse has laid.
Mr. Rodriguez, anything to rebut?
No, I think that's a very fair point. But I still think that everything has a precedent, and without Into the Spider-Verse, you would not have anything to work from Across the Spider-Verse. Let's say that this is the first animated Spider-Man movie. You do not get to that without a 5-year advancement in technology and in infrastructure. And without Into the Spider-Verse, it simply doesn't happen.
All right, would you like to proceed to your next exhibit?
Yes, I would actually. Let's talk about characters. This is one category that Into the Spider-Verse doesn't earn perfect marks in. In fact, it's the category that prevents me from giving the film a gentleman's 10. But before we get to that, yes, exactly. But before we get to that, we have John Mulaney as Spider-Ham, one of my favorite characters in Marvel history. So much so that I wrote a spec screenplay set on Weird World and made him one of the 3 central characters. And this is before this movie came out. Ham is essentially the comic relief of the film. And because his background is so genuinely bizarre, it suits it. Next up, perhaps best, Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir, a version of Peter Parker that exists in a permanently black and white world in the 1930s or so, crafted for a miniseries of the same name. One miniseries of many that exist in this particular continuity, and including him is such a tribute to the weird avenues that the Marvel Universe finds itself traveling down. And Cage is absolutely the perfect choice. When his curse of choice is applesauce, and he spends most of the film fascinated by the color on a Rubik's Cube, amazing. My only negative take, Penny Parker, the Japanese version of Spider-Man that controls a giant robot. She adds almost nothing to the film, and although she is essential to downloading the goober, you could assign that task to anyone else and you wouldn't be missing anything. When the
This
robot
is your
dies,
movie, Mr. Rodriguez.
I know, but when the robot dies, am I supposed to cry or something?
I did.
Because I feel empty. But Across the Spider-Verse suffers from excessive characters while neglecting to include Ham and Noir. I love the character of Jessica Drew. I love the fact that Issa Rae is playing her, but if you remove her from the film, you sacrifice nothing. I love Daniel Kaluuya and Hobie Brown as AKA the Spider-Punk, but there's not nearly enough of him. Mahershala Ali, well, he died in the first film and is only resurrected thanks to an alternate universe, but he's so essential to Into the Spider-Verse. It's always a pleasure when he returns, but he's just not really there, especially now that he's going to play Blade in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Victor, Carl, do you want to speak to this, basically the removal of some of these central characters from the first film and the second?
Sure. I will say that with the removal of Spider-Ham and even Spider-Man Noir, the defense I would say to that is that Across the Spider-Verse is part 2 of a trilogy and one half of a whole film. So it is possible that we may see the return of Spider-Ham and Noir play bigger roles in the next installment. Although, to your point, Ryan, I would love
speculation. I just want to lean on that.
Sure.
No, you were saying I was right. Go ahead, please.
But to your point, I would have loved to have seen them at least Spider-Ham make an appearance in this film.
Yeah,
but I will say in regards to Spider-Woman and Spider-Punk in particular, I will disagree in saying that Spider-Woman did not add much to the film. I think that for her presence in the film, it does provide a sort of a counterpoint to Gwen Stacy, sort of like a Spider-Woman is this other character, this Spider-Woman that Gwen can look up to, but then ultimately a mentor figure that disappoints her in the end, because at the end, when the chips are down, Spider-Woman does not have Gwen Stacy's back, but instead she falls in line with the establishment. She falls in line with the head of the table, Spider-Man 2099, and tries to put his mission first at the expense of their mentorship. Which I
recognize the head of the table.
Oh, absolutely. And also in regards to Spider-Punk, I will say that his presence in the film is vital in the sense of providing Miles Morales that motivation to fully embrace his otherness in being a Spider-Man that's not meant to have existed. Keeping in mind that the only reason why he exists is because he got bit by a spider that existed in a whole other multiverse. So Spider-Punk, his presence there does definitely plays into Miles Morales' motivation to embrace that otherness of him, and also Spider-Punk. He's not and it's so refreshing that he's not this anarchistic figure by name, like I'm super punk rock, I'm a nonconformist, but then when the chips are down, I'm gonna fall in line behind Miguel O'Hara. No, as we see his presence in the film, he's in the background. He's like randomly stealing components, and he's building a spider watch for Miles Morales so he can escape Miguel's clutches. He's punk rock to the end, and he embodies that spirit, and he passes that to Miles. So Punk's presence, as small as it is in the film, is much more vital than you give it credit for, dear sir.
Mr. Rodriguez, would you like to rebut or move on to another exhibit?
Not rebut, but well put. Damn well put.
Thank you, sir.
My next point is not this movie is better than this movie point. It's more of an affectionate tribute to Into the Spider-Verse, which features the second to last cinematic appearance of Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee, who passed away before this film debuted and ultimately finally appeared as himself in 2019's Captain Marvel. Lee plays the proprietor of a costume shop that Miles Morales purchases his low-rent Spider-Man costume from. And although his appearance ends with a joke, where he points to a sign indicating that there are no refunds, it's legitimately emotional. Lee was a crucial linchpin in Marvel's history, although a controversial one. He was known for taking credit for other people's creativity, namely Jack Kirby, but not in a way that approaches Bob Kane territory, but worth mentioning all the same. Co-creator Steve Ditko also gets a nod at the end of the film, and obviously couldn't participate because he was dead at the time.
Most inconvenient.
Yes, but Lee was famous for describing his most popular character of all time as anybody. Anybody could wear the mask. People identify with the character because under that mask, Peter Parker or whoever can be whoever. He can be black, he can be white, he can be brown, he could be purple, he could be chartreuse, anything. And Miles Morales is a perfect example of this. One of the most interesting characters Marvel has introduced in the past decade and a half.
Victor and Carl, does Across the Spider-Verse do anything to enhance Miles Morales' portrayal?
I would personally say his growth as he has gained some had some experiences as for being Spider-Man. So you actually see him grow physically, grow emotionally. He's this much older teenager now, where he has his clashes with his parents, just like any other teenager, and he kind of wants to get away, just like simply any other teenager. A trait where I'm pretty sure every single one of us who has been teenagers before are able to relate to. And that was one of the things that Stanley actually said, that if anybody can be under the mask, meaning that he can relate to, the character can relate to anybody. And that's what Miles did.
Thank you for agreeing with me. I also think that that's a very good point that I made. I have one final. I'm just kidding. I'm not.
No.
I'm just kidding.
This kid's got claws.
I have one final argument, and that is the half a movie debate. When Across the Spider-Verse was in pre-production, the makers decided that they had too much story to fit into one film. When it was officially announced, it was indicated as a two-part experience, but ultimately the title changed sometime in early 2023. Unfortunately, missing the subtitle Part 1 makes the film intensely frustrating. The Spot, who is the main villain, disappears for like an hour as Miles is traversing the Council of Ricks. The Council of Reeds. The Spider Council. Who cares? They're all feet on each other. He's so absent that I forgot that Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, wasn't the main antagonist, despite the fact that he behaves like he is. When the final moment of Miles learning that his dad died in an alternate universe, and that his uncle Aaron, the Prowler in his universe, arrives, it feels like something is missing. I sat through 2.5 hours of animated dopamine, and I left with blue balls. I was so mad that the movie advertised itself without indicating it was the first of two parts that I couldn't think straight for a couple of hours. Now, I've heard the criticisms defending this film, saying that it's no more egregious than Avengers Infinity War, a film that I defended in this court. But that film has an ending. The Avengers lose. Thanos, the protagonist, retreats to his private garden, secure in the knowledge that he won, despite the price that he paid for it. Or Back to the Future Part 2, which definitely ends with a cliffhanger and still is easily my favorite chapter of the trilogy. But at least before it ends, we get a complete movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end, with a stinger that is designed to get asses in seats when the third chapter arrives 6 months later. Just have the balls to call it Part 1. Mission Impossible just did it, and because of that, I wasn't frustrated walking out of the cinema. Okay, that's not true. I was frustrated because there's really only 2 complete action sequences, but that's neither here nor there.
That's next week's show, Ryan.
Vic and Carl, what about this cliffhanger? Can you
What you
defend
got,
this?
Vic?
I will say a sidebar in regards to Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. The producers actually did drop the part 1 from the title because they confirmed that there will not be a part 2. So it's just
I just watched the Blu-ray. It's still on there.
it's still on there, but
Oh, it's still on there. That's what I thought. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Ryan kind of lives and dies by these things. I think I have to sustain this one for him. I believe it's on the Blu-ray if Ryan says it, but
well, I mean that's what the producers say. The producers' plans have changed, but enough about Mission
No,
Impossible.
you're right in that they're dropping the part 2, but it's still considered part 1. But you're right.
But do you feel
dropping
that you get a complete story in this one half? I think is what Mr. Rodriguez is asking.
Yeah, gotcha. But yes, in regards to Across the Spider-Verse, not feeling like a complete movie, and the fact that it is a part 1 of a 2-part saga, I will give you 4 words, sir. The Empire Strikes Back.
I knew it.
Can any of us say that The Empire Strikes Back is an incomplete movie because Han Solo was carbonite and was shipped off to God knows where? No. Empire was a complete movie in much the same way that Across the Spider-Verse is. For example, you have Gwen Stacy's story, which has a complete arc from the first frame to the last frame. Beginning of the movie, she's still trying to figure out her way as Spider-Gwen, and she's trying to juggle her responsibilities as Spider-Gwen and also her relationship with her father, Captain Gwen Stacy. And towards the end, and there's a beautiful scene where when she's revealing her identity to him, she's bathed in like this like pink reddish watercolor, and then her father Captain Gwen Stacy is bathed in like shadows and darker colors, like he's still like trying to figure out how to feel about this revelation. At the end, they do reconcile, and her father accepts her identity as Spider-Gwen and understands her reasons and her motivations to continue the good fight in her way. And at the end, she assembles her own crew of nonconformist Spider-Man and Spider-Woman to prepare for the final stages of the war in the next installment of the Spider-Verse series. As for Miles Morales, yes, he does his arc does end in a cliffhanger, but at the end, he proves that he's going to do his own thing. He's going to rebel against the whole concept of canon events. Now he's going to confront a version of himself that has been a victim of a canon event, in that hit the Miles Morales that he encounters. Not only did his father die, he becomes the Prowler himself. So now Miles Morales has to reconcile with the ramifications of being a nonconformist and fighting against Miguel O'Hara. So while that leaves the breadcrumbs for part 3, I feel like Miles's story is complete in the sense that he's fully embraced who he is. Now he's prepared to pay the price for that in the next installment. So we do have 2 complete stories there with a smattering of breadcrumbs to prepare us for the 3rd and final film.
I'm really glad you brought up the canon event, because that was one of the most frustrating things for me, because he is a spider person. He was bit by a radioactive spider. Doesn't matter what dimension that spider comes from, especially when you consider all the many Spider-Verse characters. They can't have all had the same Peter Parker info dump backstory. But the crucial thing that really bothers me is that he lost an uncle, just like basically every single Spider person does, and they're still going to tell him that he's not Spider-Man. That's horseshit.
Yeah. To that, I do agree. And in fact, like there's one, you can even look at the Across the Spider-Verse. There's one Spider-Man that flies in the face of this whole notion that for a Spider-Man to exist, they have to have some tragedy. Look at Spider-Man India, Pavitra Papakar. Like he's fully in his element. He's completely happy as a clam. He's living his best life. and quite frankly, he doesn't have to have suffering and tragedy to embrace the mask and to web sling. So if anything, hopefully the next installment he can still prove to be that walking rebuttal against Spider-Man 2099's obsessive crusade.
Mr. Rodriguez, who decided clams are so damn happy?
I believe whoever makes the chowder.
Do you have any final exhibits you want to present before I pass this over?
No, that's all.
Right.
I cede the floor.
All right, Victor and Carl, now's your time to present any additional exhibits in defense of Across the Spider-Verse.
Well, I would say as a DJ, the soundtrack is actually one with, many artists that were featured, such as Coi Leray, Future, Offset, Lil Wayne, Nas, A$AP Rocky, entirely produced by Metro Boomin. Some of the accolades that that Across the Spider-Verse has accumulated so far, with being nominated for Best Animated Feature in the Academy Awards, Top 10 Film of the Year from the American Film Institute, and the Astra Film and Creative Arts Award for Best Animated Feature, Best Visual Effects, the Critics' Choice Award for Best Animated Feature, and so forth. There has made an impact where there will be spin-offs, such as a Spider-Women, and then also a manga feature as well. And you can also see snippets of the Across the Spider-Verse video in the Spider-Man 2 video game when you collect all the spider drones, and you see a little bit of a hint of Miguel O'Hara. So, and not to mention, like, it's box office with the budget of 100 to 150 million, where it would end up receiving it ended up making 690.8 million.
Did it make a lot more than Into the Spider-Verse?
About 200 million more. But I also want to add that, yes, Across to the Spider-Verse was nominated for an Academy Award, but Into the Spider-Verse won.
Ooh.
And the Book and the Heron is going to win this year, so it's just not happening.
He's right.
Vic and Carl, any other points you'd like to present?
Yeah, I will say, like, one final point is that one thing that I find refreshing with Across the Spider-Verse, and I'll even give some credit to Into the Spider-Verse, is that the characters of Rio Morales and Jeff Morales or Jeff Davis, they feel more fully fleshed out, realized characters. Typically in in previous Spider-Man films, like, you had like the characters of Aunt May and even Uncle Ben, like they just didn't feel. They just felt like I don't want to say set dressing, but they didn't feel like they were full lived-in characters. Like, you felt like they just lived to be reactive to Peter Parker. But with Miles Morales' parents, they do feel like they have lived full lives and are living full lives and have full personalities of their own. And the one scene where Rio and Jeff are throwing this rooftop party, and they have like this some good heartfelt dialogue with Miles Morales and even Gwen as well. They feel like actual like parents. They don't feel like they're just there to just be like comic relief or just like the bumbling parents who just don't understand #Will Smith, but they feel like real characters. So I have to give credit to both Spider-Verse movies, because we don't really see that in other Spider-Man stories on screen.
That's a very fair point. I think that Rio is the strongest element of this film. And the fact that she's so absent, basically, Into the Spider-Verse, I think notches this point into your territory.
Brian, would you stop doing their work?
I know. But this is a character that the comics have been failing since she was invented. Like in issue 19, I believe, of Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, Venom kills her. And it wasn't until Secret Wars in 2015 that the Ultimate Universe was collapsed onto the mainstream 616 universe. And now she's alive and well. Although Brian Bendis's comics never really differentiated what makes Miles biracial, and that always bothered me as a biracial person. But I do agree that definitely that Rio is one of the strongest elements of Across the Spider-Verse.
All right, Carl and Fick, would you like to rest on that?
Yes.
Or any other, if you have another
hit
exhibit,
me with
can
what you
present
got.
it.
What do you got, guys? Come on, hit me.
I was gonna rest, but unless
All
you
right,
had some.
no, that's
I'm
fine. Yep, cool. No pressure. I just want to make sure you get your whole say. All sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Rodriguez, you may begin.
Look, cases make me nervous. Even if I didn't have to have so much on my plate that it prevents me from preparing arguments, I would resist volunteering for a case because if I'm prosecuting, I don't like shitting on films. And if I'm defending, it's easier because I don't have to guide the conversation, unlike today. But it brought me no discomfort to defend Into the Spider-Verse, a movie that I adore with every fiber of my being. And the fact that I'm going against Across the Spider-Verse, if I lose, do I really lose? A film is going to be crowned the winner, and they're both great. Sure, it would be nice for the jury to agree with me that Into is better, but I have real affection for Across, and it won't burn my beans if you don't agree. That's all I have to say. Applesauce, gentlemen. Applesauce, case dismissed.
Hey, burnt beans and all. Thank you. Carl Byrd and Victor Omoayo, please present your closing argument.
Ooh, I did not prepare one. Big how about yourself?
I will say that Into the Spider-Verse, if we were thinking of composers, Into the Spider-Verse would be like Salieri, a very good composer, beautiful melodies. Across the Spider-Verse is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Speaking Schlenzo's language.
Yeah, we've all seen movies. Yeah. Get all on that. Go ahead. Fine. I'm kidding.
But yeah, I will say like at the end of the day, both films are just like chocolate and peanut butter. You cannot go wrong with either one. On that note, I am hungry for a peanut butter chocolate ice cream sandwich, so I might go get one.
Sustained.
But,
Grab me one while you're there, because I'm hungry too.
Yes. But I will say, closing, my final thought is this: for the 1, 2, 3 of y'all out there in the world who haven't seen Into or Across the Spider-Verse, one, what is wrong with you? And 2, see them post haste. And 3, buy them on 4K Blu-ray. And if you have an OLED, you must do so. Cases.
Hey, he stole the bit.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Now what do I do?
Does that mean
Thank
the
you.
case is actually dismissed?
No, I don't even. This is not a real court. Thank you all, members of the jury, Mr. Maynard Banks, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, and Mr. Big Ben Haslar. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine which film is the superior movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. It's just so sad that the math would say there's a multiverse out there where I shoot laser beams up my arse to eviscerate all those who oppose me. But I'm stuck in this one.
But you still have the lasers, right? Like that's the one part.
He still has the arse.
He'll never tell.
God damn it. All right, everyone. I am Foreman Man. I was bitten by a radioactive foreman, and now I just kind of live here. And
you couldn't say foreman. It was right there for you, Dylan.
I like being Foreman Man.
I actually do like the attenuation of that. Get that lawyer out of here, too.
Anyway.
Oh, leaves. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I got to say 2 very strong cases and 2 very strong movies. Our head-to-heads, sometimes they could be a bit silly, but I like that we actually did 2 pretty good movies, pretty good new movies, too. You just don't get a lot of those. And 2 good cartoons.
It's rare that a sequel can hang with the original as close as
It is. And I was very happy. So I was very happy with all the arguments that came forward, and I'm kind of where Ryan is. It's like, it doesn't really matter which one wins per se because they are very good. I will say, looking at the arguments I agreed with most, I think Ryan's point about Across just ending, the spot disappearing, but still being too bloated. But, I give Victor a lot of credit. He was able to establish a bit of a through line for Gwen, was able to establish a bit of a through line for Miles, though I think that was
a bit of a stretch. You know, it's like, he's
bit.
accepted who he is. It's like every hero has to accept who they are. And like he did that the first movie, for crying out loud. But it was
He's still
at least,
accepting.
at least it was an answer, you know. So Big Ben, what are you thinking about the cases and about the movies tonight?
Well, I think the movies in my mind are equal. I think they're both gentlemen's eights. There's little things that bug me about each of them. They're mostly multiverse related, but I think the strongest thing that dents across is the fact that it is half a movie. I don't think it's quite the same as Empire Strikes Back, because at least with Empire, you kind of feel that the steam is, rolling out, like they're leaving Bespin and all that. You kind of know that the movie.
You get a climax at least, right? You get a climactic fight.
Yeah, in the lightsaber duel and all that. Yeah,
Mhm.
and whereas Across, like he just like sort of goes into this other universe, and I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I knew he was in the wrong one. Like it's like, oh, there's rain in one, there's not rain in the other. I know he's in the wrong universe. So I'm like, why are you starting this whole other thread where he's the Prowler just to end like on this disappointing note? That is what makes it half a movie to me. I hate half of movies like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, or the Hunger Games when they did it. I like the 3-act structure, even if you do leave it with a cliffhanger like you do in Empire Strikes Back. And I don't like some of the multiverse stuff. There's too many Spider-Men.
What'd you think of the Rick and Morty point, Ben? Rick and Morty universe?
I haven't seen Rick and Morty. I've never seen an episode of Rick and Morty.
It's kind of this.
Well, it's the Council of Reeds is what it's also based off of. So I mean, like it's so Marvel's ripping themselves off because Reed Richards has all the multiverse Reed Richards meet for meetings.
To me, it was weird. It was like what allowed the Spider-Men to travel interdimensionally and form this console before Miles Morales broke the time continuum.
Yeah, there's like a whole city there.
Who's guarding their universes? And they make it seem like Spider-Man's so important.
Yeah, they're just hanging out
around,
there.
drinking coffee, and putting masks on horses. It's like, what's going on?
Oh, you just missed a canon event because we were just over here.
Yeah, no shit, right? So Maynard, lay it on me, brother. How you feeling?
I really liked Carl's point about the dynamic art styles. That was the biggest difference to me. I thought the art was a lot better in Across. Even though I saw a worse resolution Across, I still thought the art was better. I loved Gwen's watercolor world. I thought that was great, and I was so psyched for the first 20 minutes of the movie when you're like maybe it's 10 where you're just in Gwen's world. I'm like, wait, is the whole movie going to be Gwen's watercolor world? Because Into doesn't have a chance then. But luckily they left it. They left it in 10 minutes and I was just like, let's go back to Gwen's world. It was better. The part 2 cliffhanger, like Across's fate ultimately lies in the hand of Beyond. If Beyond can't stick the landing, Cross is just not going to be remembered fondly. So being a half a movie, that hurts. Like I
see what you did there.
I know. I like Desolation of Smog, but I effing hate the Battle of the Five Armies. So I never watched that movie. It never ends up anywhere good. And even then they still get to meet the dragon. When they were winding the music up, the cliffhanger music, you know what it sounds like, right? I was like, really? We're ending it here? You're doing your big orchestral swell now? The movie's over? Holy shit.
Oh, and then to have all the favorites from the first one just show up for that last little scene. It's like, oh, come on, don't even bother. Like, it was borderline insulting, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It was like, okay, so Noir and Ham were available, but, Nicolas Cage is expensive and John Mulaney's in rehab.
It was in rehab,
we can't let them talk. But
they do set it up pretty clearly, though, that they'll be in the third, right? Like, they're all there, even if they're both
forget them. It's, it really depends on Mulaney. I don't know how he's doing right now.
You could get a sound alike for him.
I did like both movies pretty equally. I'd give them a Scoundrel 6 and a Scoundrel 7. I really like The Spot. I'm so sad he didn't stick out into more of the movie. But I thought the best part of either movie was when they're doing the trans-dimensional art styles changing. But small point that I want to touch on, Schlenzo, that I brought up to you. Sorry, say again.
Oh, sure.
Ben, finish what you said about Vulture.
You like the Paper Vulture? Because that's the one I didn't. That's where I feel it goes too far.
He was the best.
I loved
He was the best one.
Yeah.
That was the best one. Ben. God, Ben, your lack of imagination
I loved that
is
one.
infuriating.
I knew I would be in the minority.
Whereas Spider-Punk's constant twitching, but it was only kind of between a few 3 different clippy things, I didn't love it. I liked the idea, but they needed even more of them, whereas it just seemed to kind of switch between like 4 or 5 of them. But no, I like that they retained art styles. Here's what bugs me. All right, if you retain your art style in another dimension, Gwen Stacy, or Spider-Gwen's world is watercolor. So she should be all drippy watercolor in other universes like she is. But if she did that, then she would have been immediately recognized as being, not from that Earth Into the Spider-Verse. So like,
yeah, it was a
for her, she just
shows up and like, hey, I want to enroll in school.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Where are your parents? I don't know. Let's what should we start locking this? Let's hear from Schlenzo. Have you finished any points, Schlenzo? Anything?
No, I made all my points at the beginning there. Like I look, they're both pretty fun movies here, and I thought we had 2 good cases, so we can start locking it in. Big Ben, you're first. What do you got?
Well, I do want to throw a bone to the defense attorneys because they did do so good. This movie does do what, I suppose. But this does do what all good sequels should do. It asks what happens next, and it continues that story. I love that it did that so well, and it does have that more heartfelt Spider-Gwen story between her and Miles. It absolutely does that better than Into the Spider-Verse. Very much agree with those points. But to me, they're kind of inverses because like Across the Spider-Verse starts so strongly with that I didn't mean to hurt him, but I did, and all that. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm amped up as this movie starts. And then it ends kind of with a pitter out because it's like, oh, we got to save it for part 3. Whereas Into the Spider-Verse ends strongly, as Mr. Rodriguez pointed out. Like, anyone could wear the mask stuff. Like, you feel amped up leaving the theater, which is kind of where you want to be. So on that, I will go for Into the Spider-Verse.
Maynard bangs.
I think these are very close films. I think the high points to me were in Across, and the low points to me were in Across. And Into is a very consistent kind of creamy middle. But I really live for those kind of high points. And to me, that puts the 2 head to head. If it's a dead even heat, I like to lean towards The Guest. So I'm going to go with Across.
All right, that is fair. So it all comes down to me. And I just have to say, I just ended up agreeing with Ryan too much. And even Ben's just point about the end. At the end of Into, I was hyped. I was like, man, I'm looking forward to the second one. After the end of Across, I might not even see the third one. I mean, that's not true. I'll see it because the kids will want to see it. But like, if it was just me, I don't even care. I don't care what happens in the third movie. I have no interest in seeing it because Across End was just such a thud.
There had to be a better place to leave us.
Like, forget it, man. But anyway, so today, 2 good cases, 2 good movies, but I'm going with Into the Spider-Verse. So let's go out there and tell that very handsome judge.
He is.
I thought so.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse versus Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, we find in favor of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Boom! Justice for Schwartzman.
There's so many sayings of Spider-Man and verses, and
the verdict is so rendered. Although Into the Spider-Verse is the superior movie in this universe, Across the Spider-Verse is the superior movie in another universe. Too bad we're stuck in this one. Court is adjourned.
Is that the one with Cowboy Rob?
Yeah! Oh no! This is Uncle Ben, and before any Sony lawyers or rice companies descend upon us, I actually am an Uncle Ben because I have a niece and nephew. Therefore, I also own the license. Mr. Ryan, yes! Mr. Rodriguez, you have won this case. What did you think of that verdict?
I think that the right verdict was chosen, but I also want to thank my co-counsel for giving such a damn good case that I would be completely comfortable losing if that were the case. But I'm glad that the superior movie was the victor.
Oh, thank you very much. And here comes Mr. Byrd and Mr. Omoayo. You won this case in another universe, apparently. You're hitching a train over there, or what's the plan?
I, for one, am outraged. I demand this is a mistrial. I'm kidding.
No, that's the right vibe. Go for
it. I will say, confession time. Honestly, I do think that Into the Spider-Verse is a slightly better movie, but only because like when I watched Across the Spider-Verse, I I had no idea that it was the first part of a 2-part movie. So when the movie was coming towards the end, I realized, wait a minute, we haven't seen the Spot in a while. And then all of a sudden, I saw the words "to be continued," and I was just so outraged. I'm like, oh, what? Yeah, it was an angry.
I want half my money back.
Yeah, it was.
Mr. Byrd, you have anything you'd like to add? Oh, sorry.
I love both movies just as much, so this was extremely difficult. It just made me realize that I am not the best attorney for this. But
You gave it your all.
I'm not. I did, but I'm not. I'm honestly not upset because like I said, I love both movies. It didn't matter to me which movie won. Just both of them are just great in their own way. Like I do love the fact that Into the Spider-Verse laid the foundation. Across the Spider-Verse did expand, but unfortunately, it did leave us with blue balls at the end of the movie. So, but yeah, it was. Into the Spider-Verse did lay the foundation, and I just really enjoy like watching a comic book on screen. So
thank you. This is Uncle Ben signing off before someone shoots me and I become the raison d'etre in some spider dude's quest. So let's head back to the studio.
Hey, Uncle Ben, I hope you get home safe. I didn't get to mention it because it only came up after I was done arguing. But no, I know. But I love the look of Gwen's universe, taken directly from the Earth 65 comics. Oh. The watercolors and the pastels. I wish we could have spent an entire movie in that dimension. Although I don't mind the fact that we didn't.
And I
want to double down on the Da Vinci dimension. Let's go there. That was cool.
Well, we've never been there. We've only seen one character from that dimension.
And I want to see it all, baby.
I like that he was just drinking coffee there, though. But no, that was cool. But great case. You guys did a real great job. Now tell us, when you're not defending movies in court, what is it that keeps you guys busy?
Well, you can besides doing our podcast, the Codex Prime podcast, where you can find us on any podcasting platform. I'm usually DJing. I am a member of the Worldwide Fleet DJs, so you can catch me pretty much anywhere and spinning on my Mixcloud at Mr. Byrd 1027, and you can find out on all my social media platforms at Mr. Byrd 1027. So yeah, you can catch me doing that.
But talk about your podcast.
Yeah, what's the podcast?
Yeah, so the Codex Prime podcast, we're basically like a nerd or a blurred podcast where we're approaching our 9-year anniversary this May, and we just
congratulations!
Yeah, thank you.
That's like ancient in podcasting.
It's older than some of Dylan's children.
You think we'll make it that long? Jeez.
No,
I know.
Yeah, so yeah, we just nerded up. We talk about movies, comic books, a bit of video games, and also the occasional professional wrestling events from time to time.
I said recognize earlier. I meant to say acknowledge. You acknowledge the head of the table. I felt bad.
Yeah, we acknowledge the head of the table as well. Well, not really, because he should have dropped that belt last year. But yeah, we talk about all sorts of nerd goodness and magic on our show, and also in addition to that, I also have a podcast of my own, a brand new podcast which launched earlier this month. It's called Do the Film Thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a podcast where I go into a deep dive on a single film every week, and it's a seasonal podcast. So there's going to be 10 episodes in season 1, and right now I'm on episode 4, where I talk about Do the Right Thing, one of my all-time favorite films. So yeah, check it out if you're into film analysis and film appreciation.
Absolutely.
I will be listening to that episode. Masterpiece. Fucking love that movie.
Oh yeah.
Is the all 10 episodes like the season on the one film, and then the next season will be another 10 on a different film?
Oh no, so each episode it covers a different film.
Okay, and then the season is 10 different films.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, awesome. And that was Do the Film Thing.
Yep, correct.
Cool. And you can find that wherever all the cool trendy podcasts are.
Oh yeah. Yep. So you can find
like Spotify. Everybody loves Spotify, right?
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yep, it's there. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. It's all there.
Awesome. We should definitely be able to find it. Now, we always ask our guests for recommendations of movies that you think our listeners should see. So we'll start with Carl. What is a movie that you think people should see?
One movie that I did recently watch, and I did review it on the Codex Prime podcast a few weeks ago. Actually, I want to say right when we came back, is the Iron Claw. It's the story about the famous Von Erich wrestling family, which goes through their triumphs and also their unfortunate tragedies. And this is actually one movie where you don't actually have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy.
Rob loves that movie.
Yeah, it made me cry. I think it was probably my favorite.
I think it's
movie
a Gentleman's
last year.
Seven, but Rob really loved it.
I did. Well, because they basically, all the guys learned how to wrestle, and they basically had wrestling shows. Like Chavo Guerrero taught everyone how to wrestle, and they ran like little wrestling shows in like some converted storehouse. And that stuff's hard. Like those guys get paid too much money. They shouldn't have to do that. But excellent recommendation. Victor, what have you got? What is a movie that people should see?
Yeah, I highly recommend people see Past Lives. That was my favorite movie of last year, 2023, and it's like a sort of like a romantic drama, which is not really romantic, but it's about like connection. It's about this it stars Greta Lee, Teo Yu, and John Magaro, and Greta Lee plays this woman whose family immigrates to America, and then she reconnects with her childhood boyfriend from the time they were 12 years old, and they reconnect like 24 years later. And then it's all about like words unsaid, like unrequited feelings, like how different their lives have been or what could have been had they stayed together. Very, very thoughtful, very well-written film, and I highly recommend everyone to check that out.
Oh, it sounds great. Ryan, have you seen this one?
Love it. Saw it in the theaters. Loved it.
Nice. Excellent.
Gentlemen's
They also recorded all the wrestling matches live in a converted storehouse.
All zero of them. Yes, they did.
Ryan, what is your recommendation?
My recommendation is another recent release, Cord Jefferson's 2023 directorial debut, American Fiction. It follows an African-American professor and published author who is tired of being marginalized and writes a book under a pseudonym that leans into contemporary assumptions of race and exploits the casual, performative, inadvertent prejudice of white liberals pretending that they know what struggle is, which is not to say that the satirical blaster is only pointed in that direction. Jeffrey Wright was nominated for his first Academy Award for the film, which feels like 23 years too late, as he came on the radar as problematically written Dominican thug People Hernandez in the 2000 Shaft reboot. Love that performance. Probably shouldn't have been done by him. But anyway, it should come as no surprise that he absolutely crushes it. And I am rooting for him in my Oscar pool, just as I was successfully last year for Michelle Yeoh. American Fiction is currently in movie theaters where you should support it. But if you're a deadbeat, it's an MGM film, which means it belongs to Amazon, and you can stream it eventually on Prime.
That's me. I'm the deadbeat. That's me.
Yeah,
I noticed
he
they were
just
like
squared right at
they're
you.
like an Amazon company on like every single company card. Boy, that bugged me.
So, Maynard, you were the judge. What's your recommendation?
All right. You guys like superheroes and alternate timeline shenanigans, do you?
Yeah.
Then you're really going to like my recommendation this week. 2014's X-Men Days of Future Past. In order to undo a mutant holocaust, Wolverine's consciousness is sent back in time to the groove-alicious year 1973 to ruin the Paris Peace Accords and prevent the assassination of Peter Dinklage, which conveniently gives him the groove-alicious opportunity to meet the young cast of X-Men First Class and retcon any conflicting canon that, might need to be rectified. Yes, this film was directed by some guy, who knows, but there is still plenty to enjoy. Back in 2014, having your two different casts from different timelines come together was still a big draw. It was like, Savage Hogan. This was before your No Way Homes, before your multiverses of madness. So getting to see folks like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen reprise their roles alongside Fassbender and the Smiley Joe, there was a real treat.
Smiley Joe.
Now, for the 600-pound gorilla in the room, what are my feelings on the road cut? Apparently, Anna Paquin had a minor part in this film, but the producers felt it was so unremarkable, they didn't just cut it, they reshot it without her. Take the hint, Anna. But they did wind up releasing the Rogue cut, which you had to buy a whole other Blu-ray to see. And let me just say, it wasn't worth buying a second Blu-ray. X-Men Days of Future Past, both the Rogue cut and the Unrogue, are available in ample supply, I imagine, at the rundown nickel and dime used DVD store at the outskirts of town. You know the one. Schlenzo, what have you got for us?
I actually do know exactly what store you're talking about.
It's there. Probably like 6 copies, man.
Probably is. Oh, all right. So it's kind of funny. You're talking about characters reuniting or meeting for the first time. I'm talking about characters reuniting, especially when it's old characters you love. Because you see, there's nothing better than revisiting an old series or movie. But there is something better when you get those same people in something new. And is in that spirit, I'm recommending Mr. Monk's Last Case from 2023. In this, we follow everyone's favorite defective detective as he navigates a rather middling murder mystery and new challenges in his life. I have to admit, the story and the structure for this are not particularly strong, but the feature is carried by the wonderful cast of characters, none of whom have lost a step after all these years. In this day and age of cheap nostalgia bait and cash-ins, it is important to remember why we love all of these characters in Monk. And Mr. Monk's Last Case, despite its numerous shortcomings, actually does remember that the characters are why we are here. I really hope we get more Monk movies. After all, we got all those awful Psych movies. So catch it streaming on Peacock. They're terrible and you know it.
They needed those paychecks. So Monk dies at the end.
This is the last one.
And check out my more in-depth review on Schlender 5 Productions YouTube channel. Support your local library.
You guys are banned from the library, and you know it, and you know why.
That's why we need to support it.
So Monk dies at the end?
He doesn't die. Real life
very
ghosts
presumptive
prevent him
to
from
say
killing
it's his
himself.
last case, then.
That's what I'm saying. Actually, it ends with him clearly going to the police station to solve more cases.
It's his last case so far. All right. Big Ben.
So it lies.
Send us on home.
Still wrapping up 2023, I saw 3 Oscar-nominated films last weekend, and by last weekend, I probably mean 3 or 4 weekends ago. And this one was
the
one that I
Oscars
went
are
in
over,
blind for was
Ben.
yeah, I know. No, they're not. They're coming up. The one I went in blind for was The Zone of Interest, a film I do not recommend you go in blind for yourself because it took longer than I care to admit to figure out just what was happening. I'm always interested in war stories told from the point of view of the losers, and Zone of Interest is a Holocaust film, but it's one of a different type. The way the film is framed is that it doesn't focus on evil Nazis with maniacal sneers on their faces as they line prisoners up for insurrection, the direction most of these films go, but as ordinary family building up their lives in a farmhouse with Auschwitz just and the unseen Jews just out of view. And throughout the entire film length, you never see what's happening inside the camp. Now, hearing that, you might think it's trying to paint a nice veneer over the horror that the Nazi Party and all that they did, but that's not the case. It always makes you very aware that this wall exists and that people cold-heartedly designed incinerators for bodies, trying to make them as efficient as possible, hoping that they meet their quota, so they'll be promoted to some level of Gruppenführer or whatever, paperwork that's pure evil. And to hold your attention, all this provincial life is interrupted by haunting sounds of the occasional otherworldly image, and it all leads up to a conclusion of shots that completes the narrative in a way I did not expect and left me feeling appropriately haunted as I left. So if you have an attention span and want to see a different take, Zone of Interest is worth checking out, even if it isn't at all related to the Spider-Verse.
God, don't have a
yeah. The way you started saying that, Ben, I was going to be like, Ben, the Jews lost the Holocaust. What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh!
My goodness!
Thank God we're out of time.
Or are we? Oh, we are.
Yeah. But we hope that Carl and Victor, you guys will join us again. You guys did great jobs. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having us. I was definitely looking forward to this, and didn't realize it was going to be this hard, but it was still fun regardless.
Oh, we'll have you guys back. This is the first time you get into it. There's always the first time jitters. Boom. Next time you're going to kill it.
And with that awkward silence,
Which
Yeah, thanks for having us. We had a great time. I don't know if it was my cue, so I thought we were.
I was kind of waiting, but it's cool. I want to let everyone talk, but there won't be an awkward silence because people edit those out, Ben. So I don't know what awkward silence. I heard laughter. With that awkward ending, Ben, we are all at a show, but we hope you'll join us again next time as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Watercolors.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.